Hi guys, welcome to Banyan Botanical channel where we share Ayurveda tips and interviews with experts. And today we have a very special guest, Claudia Welch, the author of Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. Claudia, welcome and thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure, Nadya.
Do you want to talk just for a few seconds about your work and what you've become to be known for?
Sure. Well, there's a book that I've written, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life, and a lot of people enjoy that book. It really comes from a lifetime of working with women being interested in Eastern medicine and herbal medicine from when I was a child, and a background in Ayurvedic medicine and Chinese medicine. And so mostly when I'm teaching around the world, it's on women's health, and it comes from a mixture of Ayurvedic medicine, Chinese medicine, Tantra, Jyotish, various different aspects of Eastern health.
Yeah, and I think your work is extremely powerful for women and balancing their hormones. And women and hormones is a very interesting relationship. Most of us face some sort of an issue with hormones at some point of our lives. And you mentioned in your book and in your workshops that stress can be a huge part of it. Why does stress affect the way our body works, especially our women's bodies, so much?
Well, it's interesting. I think I'm going to backtrack a little bit and say one of the reasons, that I think the book is powerful is that it talks to women about not how they can balance their hormones, but how they can change their lives. And it's easier for us to think about, oh, how can I balance my hormones? How can I take a pill or even an herb or a hormone supplement and balance my hormones? But the book, it's almost named backwards, right? It's Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. But really, when my editor came to me with that title and she said, here's a good title, I love this title, I said, I love it too, but it's backwards because it suggests that if you balance your hormones, then you can balance your life. But really, the point of the book and the point of the sort of take-home message of all the things we can get from Western medicine and Eastern medicine is that actually, if we balance our lives, our hormones will balance. Mm-hmm. So it really should be balance your life, balance your hormones. And because when we have a lot of stress in our lives, it is impossible to have hormone balance, because what we're looking at with a balance in Eastern medicine is a balance of dual forces in nature that are representative in our bodies as women, in great measure by the dual forces of sex hormones versus stress hormones. Stress hormones are extremely motivating, very stimulating. Sex hormones are nourishing, they're grounding for the most part. And we live within this balance, within the very fine balance between opposite poles in our environments and in our internal environments, in our bodies and our chemical environments as well, all the time. And we live within this very narrow balance. So, for example, between hot over here and cold over here, our bodies live in 98.6, as the ideal temperature. A few degrees on either side and we're very sick, and a few more degrees and we're dead. So that's not just with hot and cold, it's also with heavy and light, dry and oily, all these opposite forces in our bodies that are at work all the time, and our environments are pulling at us. And it's very easy to get a little on one side or a little on the other side and then suffer from an imbalance because of that. So, for example, when we have stress, we're getting a little too much of that motivating, activating kind of energy, and it starts to outweigh the grounding, nourishing experience that we have from sex hormones, for women, mostly estrogen and progesterone. So it becomes extremely difficult to have a balance when we have excess stress in our lives. So that's sort of a medium-sized answer.
Yeah, and I think it's very helpful to think of our relationship to everything around us as a way to find balance. And I guess one of the ways that you encourage women to find balance is to slow down, to help reduce that motivating quality in their life. And slowing down doesn't come easy to many of us. A lot of women feel guilty for taking time for slowing down and actually taking time for themselves. And a lot of us live with the belief that good people take care of other people, not about themselves. And another extremely popular belief is that successful people are always busy. So what do we do if we have these beliefs? How do we slow down without feeling guilty about it?
Well, that's really the clincher. How do we slow down without feeling guilty about it? I mean, one of the first things is maybe to recognize our insanity, because it's a little bit of an insanity. I mean, if we think about how we generally think of insanity, you know, if we see things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there, we think, oh, this person has a mental problem, right? But what we're living like as women is we are living like there's hidden cameras everywhere. That I've got this hidden camera and it's noticing if I'm resting and not being on task or productive or or accomplishing something. So, for example, we know that we have this hidden camera syndrome if we're just sitting doing nothing and someone walks in and we kind of pick up a book to look like we're being active and productive, and I couldn't possibly be just sitting here resting doing nothing. I'm reading this very important book. See, it has Sanskrit in it. And you know, so if we're doing that, we're acting like there's hidden cameras. That's an insanity. You know, there's no hidden cameras there and we're acting like there are. So if we can't even relax when we're alone, and or if we feel guilty when someone walks in and catches us relaxing, that's a little hint that we've got a little insanity going on. We're possessed by an idea of success and reliability and responsibility that may or may not be accurate, and in many cases is perhaps not accurate. You know, so in a nutshell, I think the first thing we need to do is recognize that there are no hidden cameras, that we have a little bit of an insanity with this, and understand the consequences of living like this, the consequences of constantly pushing, constantly driving forward, constantly feeling like we're not where we should be, that out here somewhere is where we should be, the consequences of living in that state of slight stress all the time. If we really understand the consequences of that, which are huge, then perhaps we can be talked into or convinced that slowing down is a bit of a more sane approach to life.
I totally would agree with you. And just one thing that I wanted to add, that what I heard you talking about during your workshop was that filling your vessel first before you feel others is actually allows you to be more productive and be more present to help others. And keeping that in mind, for example, for me, helps me not feel guilty. So maybe it will help other women as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're a writer, right? So you're in a creative field, and many people are creating something. And one of the things I think that we all would like is to be able to make a mark on humanity, leave our mark on humanity, create something of value for our communities and our families, and for the global environment as well, if we're feeling quite that lofty. And when we really ask, what does it take to create something of value, you know, running all the time and driving creates busyness, but it may not necessarily create space for something new to arise, a new idea, a new approach to something. And what I find, and maybe you've seen this in your writing as well, is I need those times, those walks alone, those times alone for the dross of life and the chaos of life to settle a little bit, and for something fresh and new and a new perspective to arise and become clear to me. It's not something that I think my way through necessarily. It's something that arises out of the depths, and that doesn't happen in the midst of chaos and scattered attention. That happens from that comes from quietness and from retreat. And I think many people have found that and written about it. That's not a new idea, but what is hard is for us to do it. I don't know why that's so hard exactly, except that I've seen over and over again that it doesn't take courage to stay on this treadmill of busyness. What really takes courage is to get off that treadmill, to slow down, to give ourselves the time, which is really what we're longing for, and to live the lives we want to be living. That really takes courage.
It does, but it pays off.
It does. I mean, we're afraid of it. We're afraid of it, and this is, I often think of this. I'm gonna slaughter this a little bit, but there's a story that Chuang-Tzu, the Taoist philosopher, tells, and he says there's a game. There's a bottomless pit. There's two guys standing at the edge, and there's one rule: you got to jump in. And one guy is shaking, and he's afraid, and he's about to have a panic attack, and he can't believe he's got to jump in. That's the end of life as he knows it, and the other guy just jumps in. So the scaredy cat guy calls in after him and is like, how come you're not afraid? Why, how could you just jump in like that? And the guy who jumped calls up and says, it's bottomless. It's not like we're going to hit somewhere. We think if we stop that life is going to fall apart as we know it. And it may well fall apart as we've known it, but just the parts that we don't like. What I find over and over is that when we make that leap into nothingness, when we stop for a little while, when we take those steps that decrease stress in our lives, our lives, the parts that we like don't fall apart. Those get enhanced.
Yeah. I just want to take a couple of minutes to talk about 3 huge topics, which are impossible to discuss in the interview, but we can just maybe encourage women to look into them. And it's 3 things that you talk about in your book and you talk about in your workshops, and that have a very powerful balancing effect on the hormones. And these are self-massage, alternative nostril breathing, and early bedtime and early wake-up time. I think let's choose one out of those 3 powerful things and just get a short overview of why it's important.
All right. Well, calming the nervous system is really important, and that's why all 3 of those things are so powerful, is they all, in their particular ways, calm the nervous system. I think the most powerful thing that I know for calming the nervous system and balancing hormones is alternate nostril breathing. Second most powerful is Abhyanga. It's hard to pick between those 2. So I'll say a little bit about both, perhaps.
Okay.
It's just with alternate nostril breathing, and what we find in sort of a nutshell is in Ayurveda and in Tantra, they link the left nostril with the internal channel Ida, which is about nourishment and grounding and cooling qualities, and the right nostril, Pingala, is related. The internal channel related to the right nostril, Pingala, is linked with that stimulating, motivating aspect. So when we balance both of those, we get a balanced experience of stimulation and motivation, which many of us don't have. We have a hyper experience of those things. So that balances that, and many of us feel like we crash, and that's not really nourishment, that's crashing. So balancing the nourishing and the stimulating sides of ourselves through those 2 channels associated with the nostrils is really powerful, very useful, and I talk about that in one of my online courses, the Healthier Hormones course. I talk about it a little bit. Thank you. And I talk about it a little bit in the book, and you can see those on my website, www.drclaudiawelch.com. And with Abhyanga, that warm oil self-massage, that directly calms the nervous system, which brings the stress hormones down, which helps balance things. And you can also find information about that on banyanbotanicals.com and my website. So both of those things you can get into deeper in other venues than this, because you're right, those are long conversations.
Well, thank you just for mentioning why they're effective. And guys, if you're interested in balancing your hormones and reducing stress, please make sure to check out Dr. Claudia Welch website and Banyan Botanical website. And Banyan Botanical also has oils that you can use for Abhyanga.
They sure do. Beautiful oils.
Yes. Is there one message, if women were to leave the call remembering one thing, what should they remember?
I want to say at the moment, slow down, which if that feels overwhelming, just try breathing slower, walking slower, and talking slower in your daily life. See how that feels.
Okay, perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much for being with us. And guys, make sure to sign up for all the future interviews. Sign up to Banyan Botanicals YouTube channel.
Thank you.
Thank you.